Hello, I'm your everyday average Jonathan. Join me this week while I turn this and this into this, a Roman Pilum Spear.
Son of a friggin' dragon!
Hello, I'm your everyday average Jonathan. I'm an ordinary guy with ordinary tools making extraordinary items. I'm a self-taught craftsman. I am an amateur blacksmith and a novice woodworker. I have no professional training and a basic set of tools that I've cobbled together over the years. Each week, I take you on a new build with me. I show you my process. I show you my perspective. I don't edit out any of my mistakes. I don't edit out any of my aha moments. The goal is simple, is to demonstrate that anyone with a basic set of tools, a lot of curiosity, a lot of drive, a lot of hard-won knowledge, and a lot of mistakes can also begin to build things that might have otherwise seemed out of reach or too fantastical or too difficult even. The items that I build tend to be whimsical in nature, fantastical, if you will. How many times have I forgotten your items like weapons and armor, implements and tools, novelties, practical items that I use on my ranch here in Colorado. This week, I'm really excited. I tend to be excited each time I take on a new build, but this one is really intriguing for me. I'm going to begin to make something called a Roman Pilum or Pilum. It is a Roman Legionnaire's spear. It's one of the several weapons that a Legionnaire would carry with him into battle. But unlike a normal spear that you might see in a medieval museum or movies, this particular spear has a very interesting, what I call a use case. It's not at all what I thought it was. And in fact, when I first started this, I didn't like the way the spear looked. Upon a little bit of research, I understand its purpose and why it looks the way that it does. Anywho, I look forward to sharing this build with you. Let's get to the shop and get started.
The Roman Legionnaires, dating back to 200 BC and even greater, a lot of what we know in terms of their weaponry that we have seen in the movies and we've seen in history books were adopted by conquering other military forces, conquering other cultures. And this particular weapon is no different. Similar to the gladius, which I made last month, the history of this particular weapon, the pilum, goes back to a nomadic group of Celt tribes that lived on the Iberian Peninsula at the time when the Romans warred with those. This particular weapon design came from those conquests. So it's interesting to note that the Roman Legionnaire, the typical Roman foot soldier, had some standard issue weapons and armament that they would carry. They would carry with them something called a pulia, which is a dagger. They would carry with them either a gladius or a spatha, both were swords. They would carry with them a shield called a scutum or a scutum. And then it's been recorded that they were to carry two, not one, but two of these spears. Individually, this is a pilum. Together, they were called pila. So last week I made a tutorial on how to mill usable wood from rough logs that you have on your property. That's where this particular handle came from. It was a standing dead, or it turns out it might have been a standing dying or even a completely alive tree that I milled this from because it was pretty, it had a lot of moisture content still, we'll just say. So this thing's gonna warp, but good handle. I'm just touching it up here. I like the way that it came out, and making that wooden head that you see at the top of it is one of the defining characteristics of a pilum. The way that they would attach the spear tip, that almost harpoon tip to it, was fascinating, that they had this sort of collar and this interesting milled head on each of their spears. I gotta be honest, I don't like the way that it looks, but it's very purpose driven and actually works very, very well once you apply the head to it. The head that I'm going to be making here, I'm making the spear tip here, and I wanted to forge it, but I didn't have any stock metal that was in the correct size for me to forge it. I did have some stock metal pieces that I kept that were in this format, in this form factor, if you will, and they looked like they would work really well, so I went about cutting those out of this little piece of metal. The historical counts of the Roman pilum, specifically this tip of the spear, were very, very specific that it was pyramid shaped, and there's a reason for that, which we will get to. When I first saw this, my initial impression was it looks like a harpoon. I didn't understand this piece. I didn't like it. I really don't like the way that this looks, frankly, in terms of design. But remember the harpoon. Now here's the cool part. The use case that I've mentioned, which really got me enamored with this, it's been debated, it's been discussed, but one thing is for certain, that these were meant to be thrown, and if the enemy was using shields, which they did at the time, these were meant to penetrate the shields. And if you can think about it, you're carrying a shield with you, and your shield is going to be this close to your body, or maybe that close to your body. This is 2 feet long. And if thrown hard enough, it's going to go through the shield, maybe into your arm, who knows, but through the shield and potentially into you as a target. But that's not the most ingenious part. They suspect that by design, these were meant to embed or penetrate and go into the shield, and then like a harpoon, they are then attached to that shield. And imagine if you're trying to use your shield and then all of a sudden you have a spear that comes through. Let's just say it doesn't hit you, and it's this levered weight hanging off of your shield. Now you're gonna have to figure out what to do with that while you're trying to fight somebody at the same time. Not an easy task.
So as the debate goes on among historical scholars as to the purpose for this harpoon-style long rod, whether or not it was made to bend, whether or not it was not supposed to bend, I chose to use a piece of metal that wouldn't bend. I actually, because I want to use this and I don't want it to, I'm going to try to throw this and stick it into something, and I don't want it to bend. I want to be able to reuse it. I chose something that was another farm implement that I've collected over the years of many. That I know is very, very stiff. There are 2 types of attachment for this spearhead to the Roman Pilum. One is a socketed spearhead, and the other is what's called a tanged spearhead. I was attempting to make a tanged spearhead, but I did not have enough material to widen it without it being extremely thin, the tang being extremely thin. So I cut it off, and now I am grabbing a piece of material that's pretty darn thick, and using that, I'm just going to weld the tang straight onto the spearhead. Since this build, I have now made myself a promise, which is anytime I'm trying to cut this groove into an axe head, a hammerhead, a spearhead of any sort, I promise from here on out that I'm going to slow down. That was really sloppy with that particular cut. And the tolerances now, once the spearhead is in, are really, really loose. And I even riveting it as hard as I can, it doesn't look good. It's a little bit wobbly, which I cannot stand. So yeah, I'll be slowing that down. Even though the tolerances on that particular groove, and I don't know what that groove is called, it's got to be called something, and someone's going to correct me here, and I appreciate that person for it. But just like the ancient Romans would do, I pulled out the cordless drill and put a little bit of an indentation in there for this to fit in. And the tolerances are so loose that it fit right on in, and it worked really well. So hopefully upon cinching it up and getting it a little bit more refined, it'll be tight and it won't snap upon use. I'm very fascinated. I can't tell which would be a better overall structural fit, tanged or socketed.
Now the pyramid-shaped head, meaning that it's square on the backside, is another really ingenious thing. It penetrated through, and then as soon as it penetrated through, it leaves a square hole. As soon as it rotates, you can't get it back out of that same square hole. It has to be in the exact same orientation for it to come out. So it embeds like a harpoon into that shield, and then it sits there like this, has a counterweight hanging off that shield. Not easy. Furthermore, they think that these were made to bend so that they would go into the shield, and then if the person tried to break them off or bang them off, they would just bend this, further implanting it into the shield. Now, not only do you have something that's hanging off of the edge of your shield, but it's bent in your shield. If you could pull it out, you cannot immediately reuse it against the people that threw it against you. It's devilishly ingenious. So this leaves the combatant with 2 really bad choices.
I wanted this to have more structural stability than just welding that pyramid spearhead directly to the rod. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grind this down a little bit, put some threads on it, and then actually thread the pyramid spearhead onto the rod, and then I will put a weld on top of that. So it's going to have multiple mechanical ways of stability inherent. I really don't know what type of steel it was that I made the spearhead out of, but I was going to case harden it, quench it anyways, just to get it as hard as I could, because the point that I put on it is actually extremely sharp, and I wanted to make sure that it retained its integrity, because I was going to throw this, as you'll see. I went through such mental gymnastics trying to find a way that I could forge this collar, if you will, this socket, this half socket. It's a hollow pyramid with the top cut off of it, if you will, and I know that there's a way to forge it. I'm positive, and I just, with my tools and my know-how, could not come up with a way to do it, so I ended up welding the pieces together. They fit really, really well. I'm proud of that, but at the same time, I just know that there's a simple way to forge that with your swage block or your anvil and some hammering. I wish that I'd come up with it. Someone's going to show it to me, and I'm going to be slapping my head. I'm certain of it. I really do like the tapered nature of this collar, or the socket, if you will, because as you tap it down, the head, the shaft, as you see here, you are really tightening up that piece of wood over the tang. It's a really, really good design idea, and then you put rivets through it, and it makes it all the more structurally sound. I also noticed that all of the historical pieces had these square washers that they used between the rivets and the wood. I thought that was kind of interesting too.
I watch a particular military analyst online from time to time, and he talks about you want to create militarily problems or dilemmas for your enemy. A problem has a solution. A dilemma is something that has one or more solutions, both of which might be equally as bad. That is certainly the case here. And by the way, in having something embedded in your shield, not only is that pulling your arm down, but you also are giving someone else the potential to grab it, step on it, and use it to control that arm. That's bad. Or the second solution, which is equally as bad, is you chuck your shield. You discard your shield. You went from a protected combatant to one that no longer has that protection. Just a really deviously ingenious way to mess with your enemy.
I noticed that a lot of the historical accounts and even some of the modern renditions of the Pilum Spear had this metal spiked point at the base of this spear. Sometimes it was round, sometimes it was pyramid shaped. For whatever reason, the Romans and their design, they seem to really, really like the pyramid shapes in their design. So I did have this spike that it was left over from another project that I had built. I case hardened it, straightened it a little bit, and attached it to the spear as you see here. And now it's time for me to put this little, that's super glue. That's the third bottle of super glue that I tried. The first two, nothing came out whatsoever. And then this one just poured straight out. So yeah, me and glue, big problem. I have seen a lot of historical accounts where there was twine or rope or hemp cord wrapped around right below the head. I think that was for if you were going to use this for thrusting. I don't know, but I tried to recreate the same. And I will say, in adding that spike on the back, this spear was incredibly well balanced. It was just ever so slightly tip heavy, so heavy towards the front end, but by and large, it was almost perfectly balanced. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to make my best attempt at a shield. I did a little bit of research on shields of the day. I was very fascinated to find out that most of the shields, they were made from a primitive form of plywood, multiple plies of wood being put together with resin. And here's the cool thing. They were said to be up to 1/4 of an inch thick. That is not very thick. This sheet of plywood that I'm making right here, this sheet of plywood is 1/2 inch thick. I was a little bit nervous about throwing my spear at this. Now, being that it is in the single digits temperature-wise outside and that I am no spring chicken, I needed to do a lot of limbering up for the throw that was to come. All right, full transparency, I did make 3 attempts. First attempt, I stuck it just in the very edge and it just didn't look good at all. Second attempt, as you can see here, missed completely. Also, I did put one of my medieval helmets on top of this. You can't see it, but it is there just to give it a little more sense of reality for me, or just sheer enjoyment. But with this particular throw, I like how this turned out. It passed straight through 1/2 inch thick modern plywood. and I could not pull this thing out for the life of me. Proof of concept is being shown here. I put on a pair of gloves and gave it an extremely hard yank, and it finally came out. But that is the difficulty that an enemy combatant would encounter. Well, thank you for joining me for that. This was really interesting and really fun to make. I got a lot out of this. It is almost always, if not always, a real joy and a reward to reverse engineer something that the historical greats made millennia before you. Putting yourself into the mind of the armorers and the weapon makers at the time is really very fascinating. And as you saw with the history lesson I gave, the purpose, the use case of this still just kind of blows my mind. All right, what did I learn from this? A couple things that I learned. Number one, I learned that me and glue, no one should ever sell me glue again as long as I live. Number two, I really wanted to find a way to forge this, to make this from one solid piece of metal and not weld these pieces together. I know if I was a better blacksmith that there would be a very obvious, very easy way to do that. I could not figure out how to do it with the tools and the anvil and the swage block, and still I couldn't figure out a way to make a tapered, essentially a hollow pyramid. And that's really bugging me. I know there's an easy way out there to do it. Also, this shaft that I milled from a log, I'm 100% certain that this is going to work. I felled on my property a standing dead tree, and upon review, it was a standing dying tree. I've milled quite a few things before, and because Colorado is so dry, they will end up warping. I'm certain that this is going to work. That's fine. And then the third thing I learned, and I've learned this a few times or when I've made axe heads and hammer heads, that cutting this groove in the top, I need to really take my time on that. I just need to slow down in that portion, because a lot of the time you only get one shot. Certainly with this, I only get one shot because I milled this particular head type. It's not exact, it's not perfect, the tolerances suck, but it did work. All right, that's it for me for this week. Next week, I'm going to begin a project that's going to be essentially a knife rack. I have a series of knives that I've made, daggers that I've made over the years that are just sitting on a shelf somewhere in my shop that I decided I just needed to make a rack. And it's not just gonna be your everyday average rack, it's gonna be your everyday average Jonathan's rack. I think you'll like what it's gonna turn out to be. It's gonna have a lot of characters. Please join me for that. Until then, God bless and have a great week.